So on today's podcast, I am so thrilled and pleased to have Keita from Ourside. Keta Burke-Williams. Welcome to the Texture Lounge.
Thank you for having me, Tumi. I'm very excited to have this conversation.
Me too. Me too. Okay, so if you could describe what you do in your own words, like not the bio version, what would it be?
Not the bio version. I guess
Yes.
what I do is I bring scent into our everyday lives through Ourside. We
Ah,
are a fragrance brand, and I think we're all about creating and sparking these moments of connection and rewilding our spirits, and scent is just our medium for doing that.
oh, rewilding our spirits. Oh, I love that.
Yes.
I really do love that. Actually, it reminds me of a book that I read a couple years ago called I'm going to get it wrong now, of course. A Wild Woman's Way, I think it was, and
Oh, I have
it
to
was
add that.
all about rewilding, like going back to
Oh.
the sense and root of who we are. So thanks for that. I may have to pull that book out from the archives. If you could pick one word to describe how you're feeling right now, Keita, what would it be?
One word. I'm somebody of so many words. One word. Cautiously optimistic. That's two words, but I'm going to go
Okay.
with that.
Yeah, that sounds good. That sounds good. We'll take that. And what are you obsessed with these days?
What am I obsessed with? Too many things. Obviously, scent.
Yeah.
My sing along Sundays that I do with friends from business school.
Oh my gosh.
I'm,
Talk to what?
yes.
Wait. Talk to us about sing. You think you can skirt around that? Sing along
Yeah.
Sundays.
Sing along Sundays are basically just like once every 2 weeks or so, a group of friends and I come together on somebody's, in somebody's living room with a keyboard and a guitar and sing songs, putting up the lyrics on the TV of songs that we all know, trying to make harmonies. I would say we're all like slightly above average in our skills, but not great. So it's a very low pressure environment where you get to like see people
Great.
chat and just sing.
I mean, I'm kind of obsessed with that. Now, karaoke isn't
Yeah,
my thing. This isn't quite karaoke. It's like the home groomed version of that with
exactly.
buddies and friends. But sing along Sundays, that's kind of cool.
Hmm.
Kind of like that. Kind of like that. And your zone of genius. Yeah, this word and phrase has been a buzz term for quite a while. But I love to kind of touch on it and see what founders, I guess, see how founders describe what their zone of genius is. So what is that for you?
Hmm. I think for me, it's when I am seeing the connection between two sort of disparate things. And I'm so close to like making it come together as one. For me,
Hmm,
that could look like research. It could look like I'm working in Excel. It doesn't really matter the thing, but like when I'm so close to finding out how those things connect or how I can make them make sense, that's where like it could be hours and I'm lost and then it's 2 a.m. and I need to go to sleep. So that's my zone of genius.
that's such a great skill. I feel like, when there are people who are really trying to figure out what their dream career and passions are, that's where that skill comes into play, right? Like knowing what you're good at, knowing what you love, and seeing how you can bring
Yes.
them together. So I know you're very busy as the founder of Ourside, but if you decided you wanted to do a little something else on the side, that could be a little something. Who knows?
You're right.
Okay. I would love to know what your most character building experience has been so far in life.
Ooh, my most character building experience.
Mhm.
That's a good one. I would probably say it is related to my dad. So my dad passed away from kidney cancer, stage 4, when it was diagnosed. So it was very bad. It was my senior year of college. It was a tough year because I had to figure out how to graduate in fewer terms than normal because we didn't have the
Mm,
money. I also needed to take a term off to take him to radiation treatments and everything.
right.
And fun fact, I worked at a Harley Davidson dealership during that time. So that was a very interesting character building
Okay.
experience. But then also how to like come back and tell people about it and how to transition back into the real world and finish up school
Right.
and start a new job all while that was happening. I think for me, it's something I probably didn't handle the best that I could. I didn't reach out for as much help as I should have. And it really, I think, confirmed the importance of building a community and having people around you who can support you on your best days, but also, your not so great days. And that's where I really saw who my lifelong friends would be. And I learned that, therapy is important, whether we're doing it actively or not. Like it's important no matter what walk of life we're going through, because you never know when something might happen. So that was a big character building experience.
Oh, thank you for sharing. So sorry to hear about the passing of your father, but really well depicted. Thanks for sharing
Thank
that.
you.
So what makes you great at what you do, Keita?
What makes me great at what I do?
Yes.
I think it's a bit of the cautious optimism piece. And I also think that I really like getting things done. So I just have this bias towards execution. And I think that served me well from my jobs. I started working at Kraft Heinz, so kind of like big CPG conglomerate, where I had to teach myself Microsoft Excel. I didn't really know anything to do with end caps or all those, terms that they use when you're in
joys of
the
end
retail
caps.
distribution world. Exactly. And I think just finding ways to get things done kind of set me apart from my peers, and also led to really cool opportunities and challenging opportunities that I wouldn't have seen had I not just wanted to figure out a way to like get things done, execute. So I think that's my kind of talent.
Oh, I love that. Back in my corporate days, I found that the people that I really thrived working with in my team were people who were incredible executors and people who enjoyed execution. So
Yes.
I feel like in another world, you and I would have gotten along just great.
Yeah, you need to balance it out, right? Like you need the people with the big vision who can help you dream bigger than you ever thought possible. And then you need the people saying, okay, how are we going to make this happen?
Yeah. That's the thing. I feel like a lot of people forget that to have a well-rounded team, you don't want too many people who have similar skill sets. You have to be able to balance out. Somebody's got to be able to set the vision. Somebody's got to be the creative. Somebody's got to love to get it done. So I love that. Are you reading anything right now? Anything fun or not
Am I
fun?
reading anything?
Any books?
I'm mostly a fiction person. So
great.
I try to like get into nonfiction, and I have to be honest, it's pretty tough for me. And the way that I get my nonfiction is through my fiance, who listens to a lot of audiobooks, and I get the summary from him. So I've learned a lot about communication styles, about so many different stuff about aging from him. And then fiction wise, trying to think of what I'm reading right now. There's a book called, I think it's called The Honeys, that I just started, and it's a little bit different than I thought. I thought it was going to be funnier, but let's see. But I'm a big fiction fan, so anything that's like a story just about humans and how they are in their everyday lives, and maybe something happens, maybe it doesn't, like that's my prime spot. So any like British TV that's based on those books, that's also for me. Yeah.
The weirdest thing is that so I moved to the US in 2015 from London, and it wasn't until I moved to the US, until I moved to New York, that two things happened. I became obsessed with tea. And that I became obsessed with watching British like crime shows.
Yes.
Like I was inundated with those shows back when I was living at home, but never appreciated them. They weren't special. Now they are the most special TV that I can get my eyes on. So
I 100% agree. Grew up watching, I wasn't allowed to watch a lot of TV growing up. It was a lot of reading. But like Rosemary and Thyme, Inspector Poirot, all of those good things. Yes.
Oh my gosh, you're taking me back. Nostalgia. Oh,
yes.
And there's a big connection between nostalgia and scent, so we can probably get to that a little bit later. But before we get into the brand, Ourside, one last question in terms of getting to know you a little bit better. Is there an insecurity that you had growing up that you struggled to come over or to get over? Would love to hear a little bit more about that.
I think I probably had too many to count. I was this Black multicultural girl. My mom is Jamaican and, emigrated from Jamaica. And I grew up in this small suburb of Dayton, Ohio. And while it was great and there were a lot of wonderful people, I never really felt like I fit in, right? Because I'm tall, I'm 5'10", so I was always tall. I liked figure skating, I liked Avril Lavigne, I liked all the weird things, and I never fit in anyone's box. And by the way, I didn't look like anyone, right? So I think
Yeah.
growing up, a lot of that insecurity led me to search for escapes. And so figure skating was my escape, reading was my escape, and later scent was my escape. So I think that kind of translates into what I'm doing now at Ourside. But those are some of the things that I'm trying to teach myself to appreciate, right? Of all the ways that we are different in our Blackness or our womanhood or whatever that might be. We don't have to fit in this one tiny box.
We do not. We do not. Destroy the box. That is what I say.
Yes.
Destroy the box.
I agree
S-
100%.
So, perfect segue. So we now know a little bit more about your background, where you're from, where you grew up, your insecurities. Can you connect dots? And we know that you love connecting dots and bringing two disparate things together.
Yes.
How did your background influence the work that you're doing with Ourside?
Yeah, so I think it goes back to this escape that came through scent. Whether it was burning candles with my mom on the weekends, going to Bath and Body Works, sniffing the, honeysuckle and the brambleberries in our
Mm.
backyard, that was my escape.
Oh,
But what I
okay.
also found was that over the years, everything I seemed to like kind of bucked tradition. So I liked my dad's Burberry for Him cologne. I liked all of the essential oils. I wanted different scents than kind of were available. But I
Mm.
never considered that I could be at the helm creating them. So, I went to Dartmouth College. I did my time at the CPG giant. I learned about surprising and delighting customers when I worked at Carnival Cruise Line, and I went to business school, which really was the ground, laid the groundwork for Ourside's beginning, because I think it gave me that boost of confidence that I needed, and the spark from a conversation with my sister Kaja that led to Ourside's birth.
Mm. Love that. I love that. So tell us a little bit about, what makes our site different. And you've kind of touched on it already, but I want to make sure that, for anyone who's never heard of our site, and I know you
Yeah.
guys are super new, you just launched in January of this year, 2023,
Yes.
and you're doing a little moving and shaking already, which is really, really exciting. But what is it about our side that stands apart from other fragrance companies out there? Like,
Yeah.
what is it about our side that made you want to bring this to the world?
That is a good question. I would say for me, scent has always been this transportive experience. It's something so small and almost invisible, but it massively changes the way I feel. And I really wanted to bring a brand into the world that made my sister and me feel seen within fragrance, that told our stories and all of these untold stories, and that didn't celebrate just one type of person. But I would say at the heart of it, it's probably three things that sets us apart. One, we're bold and unapologetic. Two, we kind of sit in this sort of better for you realm. And three, we're about conscious creation. So I would
Mm.
say in terms of being unapologetic, we're not loud, but we're here to take up space. We're for those of us who felt like outsiders growing up, who never had our place. And we're on that mission to create that spark, and create that moment of connection. And we just do it through fragrance. We are free from typical endocrine disruptors like phthalates, parabens, nitramust, BHT, all of those good things, because I think
Excellent.
that luxury can and should be forward thinking. And
Yes.
last but not least, we use a blend of natural ingredients and safe synthetics. I think we're responsible when it comes to the environment. I never want to say that we're totally green, because I don't think that
Of
any
course.
company truly can be, but we try
True.
to be conscious about, how we pack, what we pack things in. We pack our fragrances in recyclable paper, that's sourced from responsibly farmed forests in the US. We partner with a woman-owned manufacturer in the Bronx, and we don't dilute our fragrance oils because quality is really important to us. So I think those
Mm.
are three ways that we try to make sure that we stand out, and three things that are kind of at the heart of what we do.
Love that. Love that.
Thank you.
So, can you walk us through your creative process for formulating fragrances? I'm sure it's like, a long, sometimes convoluted, sometimes not so straightforward. But I'm super curious. Like, maybe you can start with how you're inspired, and then how you take that inspiration into bringing it out into the market for everybody to enjoy.
I think what you said about it being this kind of convoluted journey is totally right.
Okay.
I get inspiration from all over, either memories of scents like this mandarin flavored lip balm that I got in the gifting exchange in like the year 1999, plus new ones that I get to experience. I'm always interested in learning more about a note or fragrance accord and learn about the different ways that it can be used. And um, for me, it starts with probably a little whiff of something, and it's combined with this like hazy daydream that starts to emerge. And it's kind
Okay.
of flanked by scents in my mind. So the daydream is accompanied by like how I would imagine something would smell. And then I go to furiously tap away in my notes section of my iPhone so I don't forget anytime that happens. And then when something emerges that I'm like, oh, this is the full fragrance vision, then I translate that into, a fragrance brief, which has a daydream, a story. It has notes, information on the fragrance notes that I want to be included. It might have music, it might have images, and I take that and I take the train to the Bronx to go talk with our perfumer and bring everything to life. He helps me decode what I'm saying versus what I mean, and then it's a lot of back and forth. Until we actually have what's called fragrance mods. So basically the R&D samples of the fragrance vision, and then we tinker with that until we feel like it's right. So it is this long process, and it's quite a back and forth. And I think it's like part magic and part science for sure.
Science. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I can't even imagine. I mean, I can imagine actually, because I used to work in product development back in my L'Oreal days. And although we weren't making fragrances, we were making hair products, and our hair products had fragrances in them. And so we'd
Mm-hmm.
have to brief our fragrance team with the kind of vision that we had for it. And then they give us some mods for us. So it's not the same, but it's similar. So I can follow,
Yes.
in lockstep with you. Um, but I can only imagine, I can't, kind of can and can't imagine like really having this thorough, almost 3D mood board, because you mentioned music, right, which is a different dimension, right? It's not just visuals, it's not just sense, it's a whole sort of emotional experience of how you want
Yes.
people to feel when they take a whiff of one of your fragrances, and then you have to translate that to an outside person, right? Like
Yes.
a perfumer. And I'd love for you to talk about your perfumer in a bit. And you have to hope that this brief that you're giving them is clear enough so that you're not having to do 10 million
Mm-hmm.
modifications for you to get to the final, fragrance that you actually want. So how important is it to find the right perfumer, and what are the things that as a founder you were looking for in a perfumer to partner with?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I think it's very important, especially if you're trying to create a really unique and different fragrance experience. For
Yes.
us, fragrance is who we are, right? So it is at the forefront of everything we do. If it was a product that might have had a little scent in it, maybe it doesn't matter as much. But for me, I'm trying to create things that haven't really existed. I'm trying to use existing fragrance notes in new ways so that we can create this newness. And it was really important for me to find a partner who, one, can see my vision, who validates my vision, because especially as a Black woman in a very pale and male space, I
Yeah.
think it can too many times happen where somebody makes you doubt, what you're trying to bring to life. And so to have somebody who validates that vision and somebody who's not afraid to challenge me a little bit and push me. And then last, somebody who can interpret and will take the time to interpret what I'm saying and help me find the words that make sense to him. So for me, it was kind of like this dating process, to be honest. He says it's like almost like
Yeah.
this weird marriage, right? Where like it's a take, a give and take, and you have to understand what the person is really meaning behind the words that they're saying. And you have to get good at interpretation, and you have to be patient. So I
Yeah.
would say all of that for me makes a good perfumer. And then I really wanted to show that although there are a lot of great fragrances that are made in Grasse, France, great fragrances can be made here in the US as well, just because I think when you think about the legacy of fragrance, this is like getting kind of like, philosophical, but we source inspiration from everywhere. And so I don't understand why there's only one place where the best perfumes can come from. I think amazing
Yep.
perfumes come from there, but I think there are other stories to be told and uncovered. And so that's why I wanted to search for a way that we could do it differently. So our perfumer is trained, he's in this Society of American Perfumers. But he's also in the Bronx, New York, and that's awesome. So
Love
for me,
it.
that's like the perfect culmination of everything.
And I know you probably get this question a lot. There's no way that I cannot include it in this episode. But you said it yourself. Fragrance is very much a pale and male space, right? There's very, very, a handful, if that, Black entrepreneurs in this space.
Yeah.
What challenges have you faced as a Black woman that was looking to break into this space? I'd love any concrete examples that you can share. Make it
Okay.
real for us.
Too many to count.
Yes.
But I think it goes back to when you look at the, who's at the helm of creating even some of the really exciting up and coming brands that I love supporting, it's still majority men,
Yeah.
right? It's still majority men. So that's just the reality. I think there is a bit of, this entrenched idea that to what I was saying earlier, the best perfumes are always from grass. And I think when it comes to retailers, when it comes to funders, and when it comes to customers, those are the three areas where it really impacts us, right? So I think customers, that's where it's on me to show and to communicate with people the importance of what we're doing. And I'm so glad that we're building a community around this. I think that when it comes to retailers, some are starting to get on board slower in fragrance than in other categories, but I think it's starting to happen.
Okay.
But when you look at major retailers, you'll see that you can't find a Black owned fragrance on the shelf. Even if you could find a Black owned hair product and maybe color
Yeah.
cosmetics and maybe even skincare products, fragrance is kind of that last beauty
Behind.
category, to come forward, which means there's opportunity, but it also means like, hey, it's about time, right?
Yeah.
And then last, I think in the funding landscape, but that's no new news, right? People want to back who they know, who feels familiar. It's not even, to me, it's not an evil intent kind of thing, but we like to back people who we feel comfortable around. And right now, a lot of the funds are not investing in Black women because they don't have Black women on their, leadership team in their general partner structure. And that's okay. And I think some are making great strides and they recognize that. But the landscape is difficult for entrepreneurs of color. And it's important that we get funding just like our counterparts so that we can bring our visions to life. So I think those are the three kind of areas and arenas where it can be challenging, but it's also exciting. And when you persevere and it works, you're like, I'm that much better for having gone through that.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely true. So, in your 8 months of operation, what has been the biggest success or most satisfying moment for you so far?
I would like to say that it's like getting into certain accelerator programs or getting all the great press we've gotten. But I think honestly, it's knowing that people who aren't my friends and family are resonating enough with our message to purchase our product and then purchase it again and sometimes send me an email like that. Those are the good days for me, where I'm like, oh my gosh, we got this email from a customer who saw our product at Credo Beauty and she loved it and she bought it and she loved what our story was behind the brand. And she
Mhm.
said it meant a lot to her to see something from a Black woman owned brand on the shelves that she could support. So I think for me, it's about that like community that we're doing it for. And those are my proudest moments.
Okay, so we've got to talk about, I don't so much want to call them failures because it always sounds really harsh, but like I'd love to know, I would love for you to share like a setback that you experienced in launching Ourside and how you overcame it. Because I know that it's,
Ooh, yeah, there's
launching
so
businesses
many.
are few and like it's not easy, right? And it's not like you've done
Yeah.
this before. So share that with us.
I would say it's like a roller coaster. So things go really well and things go really badly. And, I'm
Mm,
responsible for all of that.
all of them.
Um, One thing that happened when we launched, yeah, mid-January, and we got this amazing review from a TikToker. Professor Perfume. Thank you, Amelia, which was an organic TikTok. She purchased our product. We couldn't have afforded to partner with her even if we wanted to, but she purchased our product and gave us this rave review. And that day, our sales probably like quintupled, but then for the next like 2 weeks after that, they went very strong as well for the sampler kit that we have, which I wish I had it by me. I only have our like big bottles. But that led to us selling out faster than anticipated of our stock that we had reserved for e-commerce. So it was very exciting and I was very thankful, but we didn't think we'd be out of stock for like 4 months. So that meant that I had to like scurry and source our bottles faster, our secondary packaging faster for our next run, and try to get our manufacturer to agree to work with us faster than usual. And it was a really stressful time. Where it was exciting, but also you can't, you don't have product for people to purchase and everyone's wondering where it is and if you're going to exist again. And you can lose a little bit of that trust when you're out of stock for as long as we were. So for me, that was a big realization, one of kind of planning. And sometimes you can't anticipate, especially in the early years when you don't have the past to look back on, but two, the importance of communicating with our community and our customers. And that's something that I would lean more on if that happens again and we're out of stock, is being constantly in communication, telling people what's going on, giving them a peek behind the scenes, because that's something that I was afraid to do. I thought that it meant that I wasn't good enough. I had, made a mistake, but sometimes it just is what it is. And people want to see that process of what does it take to bring this fragrance back in stock. And so that's something that I'm excited to share more of going forward if that does happen again.
Well, two things to build on that, right? It's not just the fact that you were, a new brand in the world, and you weren't able to react to the spontaneous TikTok review in terms of supply. I mean, I've seen it in the corporate world, having worked at L'Oreal. Like, I was on a brand that is not the biggest brand in the world, but it's still a L'Oreal brand. And, there were times when our hero product were organically featured on morning TV that we didn't know was going to happen.
Yeah.
And then that morning we'd see the sales, we'd see the numbers, and there are emails going all over the place and everyone's texting each other going, what's happening? Like, why has this spiked? And we track it back to what it was. And this happened during the pandemic. And if anyone who works in beauty will absolutely know that during the pandemic, supply and demand and the supply chain was just a nightmare. You couldn't get your components in time to react to the general flow of product, let alone, somebody shouting out your product on TV. So that's the first thing, is that it's not just you, it's also the big brands too. And then the second thing, the behind the scenes piece, consumers love that. And they just love to see a peek behind the curtain. So I love that. I love how you've been able to leverage, or will continue to leverage, the idea of, yep, something doesn't go so well. Well, how do we show consumers how we're working towards fixing the problem? So
exactly.
Thank you for that. I think that's awesome. Okay, so we understand a little bit about setbacks at Ourside. I want to talk a little bit about the brand design process, because I'm a brand nerd. Like, brand design, visual ID, logos, color palettes, messaging, that's my jam right here. So how important was that process for you?
I think very important. As a young brand, it was important for me that we show that we're different, one, through the scent, two, through kind of like who we are and how we do things, but three, through the visual identity. And I am not, the most creative person when it comes to fragrance. Sure, maybe that's like where I'm creative and I don't know how or why that happened.
Gotcha.
I'm just thankful. But when it comes to anything else, like, oh my goodness, that's stressful for me. So I partnered with an awesome agency to bring the vision to life. I was knocking on their doors for about 6 months before they agreed to work with me, because they typically work with bigger clients. Nike is one of them.
Okay.
And I was like, I really like that they are not within beauty. I like that they take a different approach to how they do things. And I think that we could make something great together. So I kept on, hammering that message home until they agreed to work with me. And I would say the vision that I really wanted their help to bring to life is this idea of these things that are in tension with one another, of how we are bold, but we're also understated, right? How we are youthful, but also kind of sleek. And I
Mm,
wanted that to translate to our logo, to the color palette, to your point. So that's why on our hero, you probably can't see it because I have a ring light thing, but on our hero product, there
there
we
we
go.
go.
It's that neon pop of green, but with this black bottle. And I think that really helps us on shelf. I wanted something that made somebody stop and talk. Whether they like it or they hate it, that's okay. But I wanted to set us apart and be a conversation starter, because as a young brand, we don't have 10 years to be sitting on a shelf until we're a sleeper hit, right? We are coming onto the shelves of Credo Beauty. And while I know that our fragrance is beautiful, when somebody sprays it, what's going to get them to go over
Mm.
there and browse that fragrance section to maybe even pick up the bottle? And that's the visual identity. So for me, it was really incredible to be able to work with them. And I'm excited about how the brand looks now. Obviously, since I'm the founder, it's kind of like my child. But I'm excited to see how we can translate it across the different, products as we grow as a brand as well, to make sure that we maintain that identity as we grow as a brand. And I'm excited to see how we can do that.
So you've mentioned it a couple times, but so if anybody wants to purchase Ourside, they can obviously find Ourside products on your website, right? Which we'll include
Yes.
in the show notes, but also Credo Beauty.
Yes. So
So
Credo, they're online and they're in like
in
13, they have
stores.
13 different stores in the US.
So 8 months out in the market and you've landed a retailer. How the F? That is
Luck, grit, all of
amazing.
the above. Thank you. Thank you. They're an amazing partner for us. And I think it goes back to, the conversation that I mentioned with my sister Kaja, because we worked together on this idea in the early days. It sparked from her going into a Credo Beauty and making a lot of swaps, but also realizing that the fragrance selection there was not something that resonated with her. It wasn't something that made her feel seen, and she didn't really love it, just because fragrance is so personal, right? And so it all started with a Credo Beauty, that inspiration to bring something to life. So it was a really big deal for us that Credo is our first retail partner.
Love that. So you talked about it a little bit earlier on, but I want to give you the opportunity to talk sustainability and conscious ingredients, since those are some big pillars for our side. How do
Yeah.
you approach those elements?
So I think in a few ways. First, I guess in terms of sustainability, it's kind of at the heart of what we do. I know that we're putting a new product into the environment, so we're doing something to harm the environment, right? That's just kind of the way it is. I think, of
Right.
course, that the benefit that we all get from it is more than the harm we're causing, but that's a personal judgment. So for me, I wanted kind of these decisions around sustainability to be at the heart of what we did. So we use recycled glass for 2 out of our 3 glass vial or glass components.
Mhm.
We use FSC certified paper, which means that it was basically sourced from the US and from a responsibly farmed forest for our outer packaging.
Great.
And because we're a US based brand right now, it made sense for me to make everything in the US, one, because of what I thought it meant to our story, but two, because of our carbon footprint. We still,
Yep.
use raw materials and aroma chemicals from around the world, but we're not transporting these huge gallons of fragrance and fragrance, solution across across the water. So for me, all of that's important. And then when we think about our R&D and how that goes and what happens with those runs, we are trying to be really mindful about the amount of products that we put out and kind of like how and when, because I think there can be a lot of waste in the kind of creation process when you are working on maybe 20 different things at the same time, but you only bring one product to life. That was a lot of scrap factor. And
Mm.
so for us, it's kind of from the start to finish. And then in terms of the ingredients too, we use a combination of natural ingredients and what I like to call safe synthetics or safe, aroma chemicals. And we do that because our products are, vegan friendly and Leaping Bunny certified, so cruelty free. But sometimes it's not sustainable for us to source an ingredient like sandalwood. It's very difficult to source that sustainably. And so we'll opt for an aroma chemical in its place. And for me, that's just like one more way that we're a little bit more mindful about how we do what we do.
Oh, you said the magic S word, sandalwood. One of my favorites. One of my favorites.
Sandalwood is a thing. Yeah. I
Oh,
mean, it is that thing. For me, it's
I've got to
Palo
give you
Santo, but Sandalwood is pretty good too.
So I was just about to say, I was going to give you my favorite sort of fragrance scent profile, and
Yes.
it's sandalwood, it's Santo, which I light around my house pretty much like 3 times or 4 times a week. I'm totally obsessed, and I have done for years. It's vanilla. It's more the grounding, earthy, musk type tones, or
Ooh, I
notes
love
that I
that.
absolutely adore. So yeah, that's me in a nutshell.
You
I'll
just
just say
painted the
that.
picture too of like how you, yes, that is what, and that's what's so cool about scent is like the notes and the accords are one thing, but the vibe that you get from it, I think that's what's so
Yeah.
important. And that's what we try to,
Yeah.
um, try to translate with our scent stories and everything like that, because rose can smell a million different ways, but it's
On
what
different
does that
people.
rose, what is it supposed to make you feel? What is it supposed to evoke?
Mm.
It's all about the vibe.
No, I think you're absolutely right, because if I'm really honest with myself, when it comes to personal fragrance, I'm not I'm not that big on it, right? But for me, it's more about what my home smells like. Like I go through phases where if my home doesn't smell of anything, I'm like, all right, Palo Santo, incense, essential oils, lemongrass,
Yes.
like it, and it sets me in the right mood. That for me is the most important, is just making sure that the spaces that I move through smell and give me the vibes that I feel like I need to be in. So it's different for everybody, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
So you mentioned earlier that you are not so much of a creative person. Yes, you are when it comes to fragrances, absolutely. But beyond that, maybe not so much. But how do you stay motivated and inspired, more importantly, as a business owner? What do you
Hmm.
where do you go to?
That is a good question. I think my family and our
Okay.
wider community are what keep me motivated. And in terms of inspiration, it can literally be I'm that person who will go to your house and I'm sniffing on your chest of drawers, like whatever fragrances you have. I'm sniffing the essential oils that you have. I am asking you
Okay.
what spices you cooked with because it smelled so good. So for me, the inspiration can come
Ah,
from pretty much, wherever, because there is like more scent than I could ever smell in my lifetime. But what keeps me motivated to keep going is my family and my small community, but also the larger brand community who is really supportive of us on those days when I'm feeling like, am I doing anything right? Am I doing enough? And just getting that message, getting that DM, getting that email, that
mhm.
inspires me to keep going. So yeah.
So what's the future for Ourside? What does that look like?
What's the future? So I would say the vision is to kind of become the scented self-care brand that's centered on belonging. I really want to infuse scent back into our everyday lives. I think it is and it can be so powerful. And to your point, I want to have a product for you, whether you are a perfume lover or you're somebody who loves to scent your home. I want there to be a way that you can experience Ourside. So like that's the long-term vision.
Okay. I think we're on track. I think we're on track to make that happen. And if you could look back into time, right? Is there anything that you wish that you knew before launching your business?
Yes. I think there's so much that I wish I could have known, but I also think it's good to have a little naivete. Otherwise, you wouldn't want to embark on a mission to kind of like do the impossible, right? So I think that's something that I would keep. I think something that I wish I would know is that sometimes you're going to get no's, right? When you're doing something different, you're going to get a lot of no's, and you have to get better at sorting what's personal from what's not personal. A lot of times it's not personal and it might feel like it is. So
Mm,
having a good system to deal with the setbacks so that it allows you to keep going and doesn't, get you paralyzed. I think that's something I wish I would have known looking back now.
okay, so that would be the piece of advice you would give to your
Yeah.
younger or your past self. Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
And to be
it would,
confident in who you
yeah.
are. I think that
Okay.
like that's the advice I'd give my younger past self. You're more than enough. And that's still
Mm,
something I try to remind myself every chance I get. But I think that it it goes into so much more than just the business you're building, into like your just general happiness and self-worth. So I think that's something that's really important to find ways to practice reminding yourself that.
Okay, well, we wouldn't be a beauty podcast if we didn't throw in a few beauty questions for you. So, are there any beauty rituals that you grew up with that you still maintain today, or if you don't maintain them today, that still kind of stick forefront of mind for you?
That's a good question. My mom is not really a makeup wearer, and she never
Mm,
has been. So for me, something that every so often I find myself going back to is like the Pond's like heavy cream, whatever that is.
yes.
Simple, like good, can take makeup off. But also scent was a big thing for us. So like burning candles on the weekend or having
Okay.
incense or whatever that might be. To your point, kind of trying to create the space that you want through scent for me has always been big because it doesn't take much, right? A candle, an
Yep.
incense cone. You don't need posters. You don't need paintings. You can just have
Exactly.
something small. So that's big for me. And then learning to appreciate my hair, I think is another big one. I've gone through all of the journeys and I think it looks different for everyone. But my mom was somebody who wore her hair very curly when it wasn't popular to do that, especially in the
Mm,
States. And so I think embracing that more and kind of trying and experimenting with all the things that my hair can do, that's something that I'm leaning into more.
what are you intentional about today more than ever before?
Hmm. I'm intentional about creating moments of peace for myself. And I think that for me, I feel most beautiful like when my body feels good, just because I have a lot of stomach things and a lot of allergies and this and that. So
Yeah.
when my body is feeling good, I feel good. And I think that projects. And so for me, a lot of that is making sure I have a moment to myself or just a moment to not do work. And I physically go outside the house since I work in the house. So I physically go outside the house. I go to the same coffee
Okay.
shop almost every day. Yanni's Coffee. I know all the
Okay.
baristas. They know my life. But I think that's been really great and something I'm intentional about, that even though I'm spending the $5 for that oat milk cappuccino that I could make at home,
Mm,
I'm getting out of my house, I'm taking a walk, I'm breathing fresh air, and I'm talking to other humans. And so being intentional about that has made a world of difference.
mm. Yeah, super important. Just especially as a business owner, right? I feel like we
Mm-hmm.
just go, 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 get stuff
Exactly.
done, check things off the list, but then we should be on
Exactly.
that list. So love that you're forcibly
Mm-hmm.
taking yourself outside. I try to do that, but I live in Texas and it is
It's
like
hot.
110 degrees every
It's
day.
too
So
hot for that.
it's too hot. Still no excuse. I could go first thing in the morning before the sun gets up or later in the evening. So I could do better. I could do better.
But we all have our own things, right? That's what's so cool. Like you
Yeah,
don't have to replicate somebody else's system. You have to find what
no,
you can do.
absolutely. It is absolutely true. So what I have now adopted as part of this podcast is asking my Texture Lounge guests from the past to share a question anonymously to future guests. So the question that has been set for you, Keita, is when do you feel most in alignment?
Ooh, most in alignment. It probably has to do with having spoken to the people that I hold near and dear to me, aka my mom, my sister, my fiance, and communicating with them. I can go into periods where I'm not great at communication and not consistent communication, but if I know what's up with them, if I've spoken with them even for 5 minutes, and if I've done some sort of moving my body, whether it's like dancing around at home, whether it's going on a walk, whether it's actually working out at the gym, um, that makes my body feel really good and in turn my mind feel good. So I think that plus getting actually like an 8-hour night of sleep, I feel very in alignment, and I feel like the problems are surmountable, and that I can
Mm,
tackle things that come at me. So I think that's when I feel most in alignment, and it feels like I'm supposed to be doing what I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing.
so connection to those that you love the most. Love
Yeah,
that. Okay. Okay,
that's a
Keita, like
good
tell
question.
us, is there any, say that again?
I said that was a good question. I'm like, that was
Ah,
deep.
listen, I always ask them, reach down to the
Yes.
nethers and pull something out. So is there anything coming up in terms of projects or launches or anything that we should be looking out for as far as
I would
Ourside?
say follow us on Instagram because I'll be sharing there. We're working on new product development and I'm looking to get feedback from our community, which might even extend to trying some R&D samples and getting your feedback on those. So please follow our Instagram so that when I post about that and I share a link for like where you can sign up, then you'll be in the know because I really want to get community feedback.
Oh, I love that. Co-creation.
Yes.
So you told us about where to find you. Obviously, Instagram at Ourside. Is that correct?
Ourside.nyc, since we're a New
Dot
York-based
NY.
company and we make everything in New York. And that's the same with our website is it's www.ourside.nyc.
Okay. Now, in the beginning of the podcast, I asked you how you were feeling in one word. You gave me two: consciously optimistic, I think it
Yes.
was. What would it be now?
Oh, I'm pumped. Now I feel like I can go do anything in the day. I'm excited. I'm
Yes.
energized. You know what I mean?
Yes, I get it. I love it. I feel like I want to go outside, but I'm not.
Yeah. I mean, but it's about to be that hot time. So you
It is
can
about to
save
be
that
that
for
hot
tomorrow
time.
morning.
I will. I absolutely will. Okay. This has been such a pleasure to get to know you, Keita. I am so thrilled and excited for you and
Thank
Ourside.
you.
I hope it comes across. I am truly impressed with what you've been able to achieve with Ourside in the first year. You haven't even reached year 12 yet. You're at year 8, month 8. And I will definitely be staying tuned to see what's happening with Ourside. So thank you for sharing your story with us today.
Thank you for having me. It was a wonderful conversation. Thank you, Tumi.
You are welcome.